Let's jump over to our leadership lessons from Luke. And let's speak about, we're talking about hiring and firing, and I thought it was really interesting that I've actually been wanting to talk about this story because, I mean, the heading of this in chapter 16, verse 1 of Luke is the parable of the shrewd manager. And I kind of always had this up my sleeve because I'm like, this is leadership 101, really, isn't it? Like that, with a heading like that, like, all right, like, okay, we need to be a shrewd manager. Let me actually read. There's a lot in this, so let me just read it, and then I want to discuss it with Dr. Rod. So Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. Back to what you were saying, Dr. Rod, before, like, you can earn all that money, but don't waste it. So he called him in and asked him, what is it I hear that you hear about you? Give an account for your management because you cannot be manager any longer. So he's firing him, right? He's calling him in, giving him a performance review, and he's firing them. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do. I know what I'll do when I lose my job here, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. Kind of a bit of a theme, like I know that Dr. Rod said earlier, when you're firing people, make sure you offer them an opportunity to come in and do their resumes or whatever. There's actually a bit of a theory in, when you go to fire someone, at the moment you decide to fire them, they need to be off the premises because they can run amok. You don't know what they're stealing from, what data they're going to be stealing or what toxicity they're going to be spreading. So be careful. So he called each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first one, how much do you owe my master? 800 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. And he told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than they are of people of the light. Now, before I go on, I think this is where the question that I have is for you, Dr. Rod. The manager's kind of stealing from him, really. Like, that's the way that I kind of see it. And then the master commended him. I don't understand that part.
Well, guess what? You're not the only one. I tell you, this parable has probably excited more thought than any other.
Really?
Because we've got a manager here who's clearly doing the wrong thing, and yet the master commends him. Now, I reckon the audience that Jesus was speaking to, they would have woken up at that point. They might have had a sense of indignation, particularly the Pharisees among them, many of whom were very, very attached to money, many of whom were fairly wealthy. They weren't all. A lot of the Pharisees weren't, because just being a Pharisee didn't actually put you in the ranks of the elite. And the Pharisees also did care for the poor. So I'm guessing that among this group of Pharisees, there were some who were very much hooked on money, mammon, as Jesus calls it a little later on. But I don't think the point of the parable is that the manager did something wrong. I think the point of the parable is that the manager did something shrewd or cunning. And what it was that he was doing was currying favour, which he could draw on when his employment ceased. And he was obviously fairly certain that that was going to happen. I've often thought, well, okay, if the master, the owner was Jesus, why would he commend his steward or his manager for doing what he did? Well, actually, the reason being, Jesus' model is very different to the model of the world. And our God, who owns everything and has actually only given us stewardship rights over everything, does expect that we use what he has given us to steward in order to advance the kingdom, in order to make friends that we take with us into eternity.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't actually seen too many commentaries along those lines, but that was a thought that occurred to me as I was preparing for our podcast, that the master is Jesus. We are his stewards. He's the one who's given us everything, and he does expect us to steward it in a very different way to what those who are in the world would do, because our natural inclination, drawing on the world's philosophies, would be, oh, no, that manager was doing something wrong. But in the kingdom, no, it isn't. In the kingdom, you use the resources that God has given you to steward to advance the kingdom. And that does mean winning friends for Jesus, winning friends who you will spend eternity with. That's just an interesting wrinkle. But I think the main point is this, that Jesus wasn't making any commentary really on the ethical position of the manager. His commentary was on the way in which the manager was using the resources he had to steward in such a way as to create friends for the future.
So, moral of the story, be deceitful, steal from your boss, and
make friends.
And win favor. No, I think that like I said, there is a lot of well, I think actually looking at the firing and hiring concept is the manager, if he had have acted like that from the beginning, maybe he wouldn't have been fired, because...
Well, actually, the parable doesn't conclude with his being fired anyway. As far as we know, he wasn't fired because his shrewdness was something that, for some reason or other, was attractive to the master.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
So, I mean, there's a few things in there. When you go to fire someone, make sure you fire them and get them off the property, because they will go around and steal your accounts and stuff like that. You need to be careful of that. But yeah, I think that there's a lot to take on that. But look, hiring and firing, it is very, very important for us as leaders that we get good at hiring and firing, because we need the right team with us. Now, firing people, we have to go through the right processes. We have to, you make sure we do it right, to make sure it's, one, fair, but also, we can't just fire people willy-nilly. We have to try to... Now I say that willy-nilly, I wonder where that jargon actually came from. But anyway, we can't just fire people off a whim, right? We have to performance manage. We have to look at ourselves. Was it our culture? Was it something that we did wrong that we need to fix first? Get our values aligned, our values clear, so that people can align themselves with our values, and maybe the team members will vote themselves off the island instead of us having to fire them. When we're trying to recruit people, trying to recruit the right talent, sometimes we've just got to pay the big dollars to attract them. Other times, if we got that right culture, we're going to be attracting people anyway to our organization. And unfortunately, you need to make sure that you're attracting the right talent to your team, because that's how you can best perform your outcome, your purpose as an organization, as a leader, with whatever you're leading, whether it be a ministry, whether it be a business, whether it be a corporation. You have a purpose, and that purpose is, as Dr. Rod said, add value to your customers, add value to your community. And so make sure that you have the best team to be delivering that value. So recruit the right people, but also make sure you're getting the people out of there that aren't performing properly in the right way with neighborly love, as Dr. Rod shared. Now, if you've enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm giving us a thumbs up, and put a comment below, say hi, whatever. Do give us a comment. And hey, if you've liked this stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would be an honor to see you part of our community. But Dr. Rod, once again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today.
It's always good to be with you, Craig. I really do enjoy it. And, praise God, we trust that some people will gain some value from this.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you, Yash, in the background for pressing buttons. And thank you for watching. And we will see you next week. Bless you and have a great week. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.